Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery and looked out at the stars. He had been flying ships for 20 years, but this mission felt different. Something about the orders from Earth made his stomach tight with worry. The message from Admiral Patricia Hayes had been short and direct. 3 Federation ships had gone missing near a place that every alien race called forbidden. Now Earth wanted him to find out what happened to them. Dr. Lisa Carter walked onto the bridge carrying a data pad filled with old star charts. She had been studying them for weeks, trying to understand why every species in the galaxy marked one area of space as completely off-limits. The charts called it the void between, and every race had the same warning written in their own language. Do not go there. Do not even think about going there. Captain, I think I found something important, Lisa said as she moved to stand beside him. These missing ships were all doing research on quantum frequencies before they vanished. The same frequencies that lead to that forbidden zone. Jake turned to look at her. Lisa was one of the smartest people he knew, and when she looked worried, he paid attention. What kind of research? They were trying to map dimensional barriers. All 3 ships had been testing ways to break through into what they called parallel space. But Captain, every Federation record says that area is completely forbidden. No one goes there, ever. Navigation Officer Danny Walsh looked up from his station. Captain, I have been tracking the path of those missing ships. They all followed the same route before they disappeared. They were heading straight for the dimensional threshold that leads to that forbidden space. Jake felt that tight feeling in his stomach get worse. The 3 missing ships belonged to races that were much more advanced than humans. The Karani had technology that could think faster than any human computer. The Thaklan were warriors, with weapons that could destroy entire planets. The Viridians could read minds and move objects with just their thoughts. If these powerful races had vanished, what chance did humans have? Chief Engineer Kevin Brooks came onto the bridge wiping grease from his hands. Captain, I have been looking at the wreckage reports from the area. What we found does not make sense. These ships were not destroyed by weapons or explosions. They look like something tore them apart from the inside. Lisa pulled up images on the main screen. The pictures showed pieces of alien ships floating in space. The metal was twisted and bent in ways that seemed impossible. Some parts looked like they had been burned, but not by any fire or energy weapon. They looked like they had been burned by something that should not exist. Look at this, Lisa said, pointing to one image. This is a piece of a Karani ship. Their technology is so advanced that their hulls can repair themselves. But this metal looks like it was attacked by something that made it forget how to be. Metal. Communication Officer Beth Turner turned from her station. Captain, I am getting strange readings from that area of space. The quantum frequencies are not stable. They keep changing, almost like something is calling to ships that get too close. Jake looked at his crew. He had sailed with most of them for years. They were good people, and he trusted them with his life. But this mission felt like it might be asking too much of all of them. The Federation Council had made it very clear that humans were the newest members of the galactic community. They were also the weakest and least advanced. Most alien races still thought of humans as primitive children who barely understood how to travel between stars. Captain, Danny said from his station, I am reading more wreckage ahead. This looks fresh. The main screen showed new images. More pieces of destroyed ships floated in the darkness, but these were different. Some of the wreckage was still glowing with energy that should have faded days ago. Other pieces seemed to be moving in ways that defied the laws of physics. Those are Viridian ship components, Lisa said, her voice getting quiet. Captain, the Viridians are the most psychically gifted race in the Federation. If something happened to them, something that could affect minds directly— She did not finish the sentence, but Jake understood. The Viridians could read thoughts and communicate without words. They could sense danger from great distances and protect themselves with mental shields that most races could not break. If something had overcome them, it was something beyond normal understanding. Security Chief Amy Rodriguez entered the bridge carrying a weapon that looked primitive compared to the energy guns used by other Federation races. Captain, I think we should be ready for trouble. These disappearances are not random. Something is hunting Federation ships, and it is getting better at it. Jake looked at the images of destroyed ships on the screen. Each wreck told a story of something that should not have been possible. The most advanced races in the galaxy had been defeated by something they had never encountered before. Something that came from a place that every civilization had learned to fear. Beth, send a message back to Earth, Jake said. Tell Admiral Hayes that we have found evidence of the missing ships. Tell her that we are going to investigate the dimensional threshold. Captain, Lisa said. The Federation Council was very clear about this. No ship is supposed to go near that area. The warnings exist for a reason. Jake nodded. I know. But 3 Federation ships are gone, and we might be the only ones who can find out what happened to them. If something from that forbidden space is hunting our allies, we need to know what it is and how to stop it. The Discovery moved forward through the debris field. As they got closer to the dimensional threshold, the instruments began showing readings that made no sense. Energy levels fluctuated wildly. Time seemed to move differently in some areas. Even gravity appeared to be working in ways that violated everything they knew about physics. Captain, Danny said, we are approaching the coordinates where the dimensional barrier is thinnest. The quantum frequencies are getting stronger. Jake felt the ship shudder slightly as they moved through space that seemed to resist their passage. The stars outside began to look different, as if they were being seen through water or thick glass. The normal blue glow of their engines started to flicker with colors that had no names. All stations, prepare for dimensional threshold approach, Jake announced. We are about to enter space that no human has ever seen before. Stay alert and remember your training. As the Discovery approached the barrier between normal space and the forbidden dimension, Jake wondered if they were flying toward answers or toward the same fate that had claimed the other ships. The one thing he knew for certain was that they were about to discover why every advanced race in the galaxy had marked this place as absolutely forbidden. The moment the Discovery crossed the dimensional threshold, everything changed. Dr. Lisa Carter watched her instruments go crazy as readings jumped between impossible numbers. The ship's computer systems started showing error messages in languages that did not exist. Even the air seemed to taste different, like metal and electricity mixed with something that made her teeth hurt. Captain Jake Morrison gripped his chair as the ship shook violently. Outside the windows, space looked wrong. The stars were the wrong colors and seemed to be moving in patterns that hurt to watch. Some areas of space were completely black, not just empty, but black in a way that seemed to pull light into them and destroy it. Report, Jake called out as the shaking stopped. Chief Engineer Kevin Brooks looked at his readings with confusion. Captain, our main computer is failing, but our backup systems are working fine. The alien technology we borrowed from the Federation is shutting down, but our old human equipment is still running. This was strange because human technology was supposed to be primitive compared to what other races used. The Discovery carried some of the most advanced Federation equipment available, But now, it was useless. Meanwhile, the simple human machines that most aliens laughed at were working perfectly. "The quantum drive is offline," Kevin continued. "The Karani navigation system is dead. Even the Viridian communication array is not responding. But our old radio, our mechanical backup systems, and our chemical rockets are all working." Security Chief Amy Rodriguez checked her weapons. The energy guns that Federation security forces used would not turn on. But her old projectile weapons, the kind that used gunpowder and metal bullets, were working fine. "Captain, our modern weapons are dead, but the old guns still work. I do not understand it." Navigation Officer Danny Walsh tried to make sense of his instruments. "Captain, the space around us is not following normal rules. Distance seems to change depending on how we look at it. Time is moving at different speeds in different areas. And there are things moving out there that are not ships." Dr. Lisa Carter ran more tests on the strange readings. "Captain, I think this dimension operates on different physical laws. The more advanced our technology, the less it works here. It is like this place is designed to reject complex systems." Communication Officer Beth Turner tried to contact Federation Command, but got only static. "I cannot reach anyone in normal space. The quantum tunnel we came through has closed behind us. We are completely cut off." Jake looked around at his crew. They were trapped in a place that seemed designed to kill anyone who entered it. But somehow their primitive human equipment was working better than the advanced alien technology they carried. This made no sense according to everything they knew about science and engineering. "Captain," Danny said, "I am picking up a signal. It is very weak and coming from somewhere nearby." The signal was not like normal radio or quantum communication. It sounded like voices, but they were speaking in a way that seemed to bypass the ears and go directly into the mind. The words formed pictures and feelings instead of just sounds. "Help," the voice said inside their heads. "Still alive. Cannot escape. They are here. They are always here." Lisa worked to trace the signal. "It is coming from wreckage about 2 kilometers away. The signal is weak, but it appears to be from a surviving crew member of one of the missing ships." Jake made a decision that he hoped would not kill them all. "Danny, take us to that signal. Kevin, keep our primitive systems running. Amy, prepare a boarding party with old-style equipment only." As the Discovery moved toward the source of the signal, they saw more wreckage floating in the strange space. But this wreckage was different from what they had seen before. Some pieces were moving even though nothing was pushing them. Other pieces seemed to be changing shape as they watched. "Captain," Amy said, "I am seeing movement in some of those wrecks, but it does not look like survivors. It looks like something else is moving around inside the dead ships." The signal got stronger as they got closer. The voice in their heads became clearer, but also more frightening. "Do not come here. They will find you. They feed on minds. They are always hungry, always hunting." Lisa analyzed the wreckage they were approaching. "This is a Karani vessel. But, Captain, the damage is not from any weapon I know. It looks like the ship was attacked by something that could change the nature of matter itself." As they got closer, they could see inside the broken ship through holes that had been torn in its hull. The interior looked like a nightmare. Equipment that should have been solid was flowing like liquid. Walls seemed to be breathing, and in the shadows things were moving that should not have been alive. "Kevin, prepare a shuttle," Jake ordered. "Amy, you and I are going over there. Use only the old human equipment. Nothing that the Federation gave us." "Captain," Beth said, "I am picking up more signals now. They are coming from all around us. The voices are getting louder. The voices were not just from one survivor now. There were many of them, calling out from different wrecks scattered through this twisted space. All of them were saying the same things, warning about something that hunted minds, something that fed on thoughts and dreams and turned them into food. As Jake and Amy prepared to board the shuttle, Lisa made a discovery that chilled her blood. "Captain, I have been analyzing the patterns in this space. The wreckage is not randomly scattered. It is arranged in a specific pattern, like bait, in a trap. Something has been collecting these ships for a purpose." The shuttle launched from the Discovery using simple chemical rockets instead of the advanced propulsion systems that had failed. As they flew toward the Karani wreck, Jake could see movement in other ships around them, shadows that moved independently of any light source. Shapes that seemed to exist in more dimensions than normal space allowed. "Amy, whatever we find in there, remember that our job is to gather information and get back to warn the Federation," Jake said. "We cannot help these people if we do not understand what we are fighting." The shuttle docked with the Karani ship, using magnetic clamps, another primitive technology that worked when advanced systems failed. As they prepared to enter the wreck, the voices in their heads got stronger and more desperate. "Turn back," they said. "Save yourselves. Do not let them know you are here. They are always watching, always waiting. They know when new minds arrive." Jake and Amy entered the broken ship carrying flashlights and simple radios. Behind them, the Discovery waited in space that defied understanding, surrounded by the remains of civilizations that had been destroyed by something that should not exist. They were about to discover what had been hunting the most advanced races in the galaxy, and why no one who entered this dimension had ever returned to warn others. Inside the Karani ship, Jake Morrison and Amy Rodriguez found horrors that would haunt their dreams forever. The walls seemed to be alive, pulsing with a rhythm that matched no heartbeat from any known species. Equipment that should have been. Solid metal was flowing like thick liquid, and in some places, the ship's structure had been twisted into shapes that hurt to look at directly. They followed the distress signal deeper into the wreck, using their flashlights to navigate corridors. That seemed to stretch longer than the ship's actual size. Their simple human radios crackled with interference, but they still worked, unlike the advanced Federation communication systems that had completely failed. "Captain," Amy whispered, "something is very wrong here. The gravity keeps changing direction, and I swear some of these walls are watching us." Jake felt it too, the sensation of being observed by something that existed in ways his mind could not fully understand. As they moved through the ship, they began to find evidence of what had happened to the Karani crew. Personal items were scattered everywhere, but they had been changed somehow. Tools that should have been simple machines now seemed to think and feel. They found the first body in what had been the ship's bridge. The Karani crew member was still alive, but only barely. His large black eyes, normally filled with the cold intelligence of his species, now showed terror beyond description. When he saw Jake and Amy, he tried to speak, but the words came out as a mixture of his own language and something else entirely. "The thoughts," he gasped. "They eat thoughts. They came from nowhere and everywhere. We could not fight them because they were inside our minds before we knew they existed." Dr. Lisa Carter's voice came through their simple radios from the Discovery. "Captain, I am analyzing the quantum readings from your location. Whatever attacked this ship exists partially in our dimension and partially in others. It can affect matter and energy, but its primary target appears to be consciousness itself." The Karani survivor grabbed Jake's arm with surprising strength. "You must understand, we are the most logical race in the galaxy. Our minds work in perfect patterns, and our technology integrates directly with our thoughts. That is why we fell so quickly. They used our own mental discipline against us. As if summoned by his words, something moved in the shadows around them. It was not quite visible, but Jake and Amy could sense its presence. The air became thick and hard to breathe. Their flashlights began to flicker, not because the batteries were failing, but because the light itself seemed reluctant to exist in this space. "They are here," the Karani whispered. "They never leave. They feed constantly on whatever remains of our minds." The entity that emerged from the shadows was unlike anything in Federation records. It seemed to be made of darkness, that thought and hunger that had learned to move. It reached toward them with appendages that existed in too many dimensions at once. But as it touched Jake's mind, something unexpected happened. Instead of the immediate overwhelming that the Karani had experienced, Jake felt confusion from the entity. His human mind, chaotic and contradictory, seemed to puzzle the creature. Where the Karani thought in perfect logical patterns, Jake's thoughts jumped randomly between different ideas, holding multiple conflicting concepts at the same time. "Amy, back away slowly," Jake said, but he noticed that the entity seemed more interested than aggressive. "I think it is trying to understand us, but we are not what it expected." Amy's mind was similarly chaotic by the entity's standards. Her thoughts were filled with tactical assessments, personal memories, and emotional responses, all happening at once. The creature tried to latch on to her consciousness, but seemed unable to find the clear, organized patterns it was used to feeding on. The Karani survivor watched in amazement. "Impossible. They should have consumed you instantly. No race has ever resisted their initial contact." Lisa's voice crackled through the radio again. "Captain, I am monitoring the quantum fluctuations around you. The entity's energy signature is unstable. It appears to be having difficulty processing your neural patterns." Jake realized what was happening. "Lisa, run a comparison between human brain patterns and those of other Federation races. I think our chaotic thinking might be protecting us." While Lisa worked on the analysis, more entities began to emerge from various parts of the ship, but instead of attacking, they seemed to be studying the humans with something resembling curiosity. These creatures had fed on the ordered minds of dozens of species, but they had never encountered anything like human consciousness. "Captain," Lisa reported, "you are correct. Human neural patterns are far more chaotic than any other known species. We think in contradictions, hold multiple opposing beliefs simultaneously, and our emotions constantly interfere with our logic. From the perspective of these entities, we might as well be insane." The Karani survivor tried to stand, his legs shaking from the prolonged mental assault he had endured. "They have been collecting ships for cycles, gathering the mental patterns of every advanced race. They use our own cognitive abilities as pathways to consumption, but your minds are too disordered for them to easily navigate." Amy kept her primitive, weapons ready, though she was beginning to understand that bullets might not be effective against creatures made of pure, malevolent thought. "Captain, if they cannot easily consume us, what does that mean for our mission?" Before Jake could answer, images began flooding their minds. Not the overwhelming mental assault that had destroyed other crews, but something more like confused communication attempts. The entities were showing them memories of their feeding process, trying to understand why the humans were different. They saw the final moments of the Thaklon warriors, their disciplined military minds turned against them as the entities used their own tactical training to predict and counter every move. They witnessed the destruction of the Viridian explorers, their powerful psychic abilities becoming conduits for immediate possession. They have been preparing, Jake realized. Each species they consume teaches them something new about advanced consciousness. They are learning how to break through the mental defenses of every race in the galaxy. The Karani survivor nodded weakly. They showed me their plan. They intend to breach the dimensional barrier and spread into normal space. Each mind they consume makes them stronger and more capable of understanding how to defeat others. Lisa's voice came through the radio with new urgency. Captain, I am detecting massive energy buildups throughout this dimension. It looks like these entities are preparing for some kind of coordinated assault on the dimensional boundary. Jake looked around at the entities surrounding them, no longer seeming hostile but still alien beyond comprehension. The creatures that had easily destroyed the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were puzzled by human minds that refused to cooperate with logical invasion techniques. "Amy, we need to get back to the ship," Jake said. "We have the information we came for, and we need to warn the Federation before these things break free." As they prepared to leave, the Karani survivor grabbed Jake's arm one final time. "You cannot fight them with weapons or technology. They consume order and logic, but your chaos might be the key to stopping them. Do not let them learn to understand you." Back aboard the Discovery, Jake Morrison gathered his crew to share what they had learned. The entities in this forbidden dimension were not just predators. They were preparing for an invasion of normal space that would consume every advanced civilization in the galaxy. But somehow, human minds seemed to resist their feeding process. Dr. Lisa Carter worked frantically at her station, analyzing the data they had collected from the Karani ship. "Captain, I think I understand why we are different. Every other Federation race has evolved toward logical thinking and mental discipline. Their minds work in organized patterns that these entities can easily read and manipulate." She pulled up brain scan comparisons on the main screen. "Look at this. Karani thoughts move in perfect logical sequences. Thakalon minds show rigid military structure. Viridian consciousness operates in clear psychic channels. But human thoughts are completely chaotic." The scans showed human brain activity jumping randomly between different areas, with emotions and logic interfering with each other constantly. What other races considered a sign of primitive development, these readings suggested might actually be a form of natural defense. Chief Engineer Kevin Brooks looked up from his repairs. "Captain, I have been thinking about why our simple equipment works here while advanced technology fails. What if these entities can manipulate any system that operates on logical principles?" Kevin had been modifying their remaining systems based on purely human intuition rather than Federation engineering standards. "I have been adding random variations to our shield harmonics and making our navigation systems deliberately unpredictable. The entities seem unable to anticipate what our equipment will do next." Security Chief Amy Rodriguez had been developing new tactics based on her experience in the Karani ship. "Captain, I think we need to fight them the way humans have always fought when facing superior enemies. We use confusion, misdirection, and strategies that make no logical sense." She had been training her security team to act in ways that would violate every Federation combat manual. "Instead of organized formations, we move randomly. Instead of logical targeting, we shoot at shadows and empty space. It sounds crazy, but crazy might be exactly what we need." Communication Officer Beth Turner suddenly looked up from her station with alarm. "Captain, I am detecting quantum signatures approaching our position. It looks like another Federation fleet is heading toward the dimensional threshold. The approaching signatures belong to ships from the Ethereal Collective, the most psychically advanced race in the galaxy. Their minds were so highly developed that they could communicate across vast distances and manipulate matter with pure thought." They were also exactly the kind of consciousness that the entities would find most delicious. "How long until they reach the threshold?" Jake asked. 6 hours, Captain, and I do not think our communications can reach them through the dimensional barrier to warn them. Lisa analyzed the approaching fleet. "Captain, if the entities capture the ethereal collective, they will have the final component they need to break through into normal space. The ethereal psychic abilities could be the key that unlocks the dimensional barrier." Jake realized they were facing an impossible choice. They could try to escape and warn the Federation, but by the time help arrived, the entities would have consumed the ethereal fleet and broken free. Or they could stay and try to prevent the disaster with just one small ship and a crew that was only beginning to understand their strange advantages. "Kevin, how long would it take to modify our systems for a direct assault on the entity's central nexus?" Kevin looked at his readings. "Captain, with conventional weapons, we have no chance. But if I can create a feedback loop using our chaotic systems, I might be able to disrupt their dimensional stability. It would require overloading everything we have, including life support." Amy checked her weapons inventory. "Captain, I have been thinking about what the Karani survivor told us. These entities feed on logical minds, but what if we fed them something that would make them sick instead of stronger? She had developed a plan that sounded insane, but might work. What if we deliberately exposed our minds to them, but filled our thoughts with contradictions and paradoxes? Human minds can handle believing two opposite things at the same time. But these entities seem to need logical consistency to function. Navigation Officer Danny Walsh had been tracking the entities' movements throughout the dimension. "Captain, they are all converging on a central location. I think that is where they plan to breach the dimensional barrier when the ethereal fleet arrives." The location Danny identified was a region of space where reality seemed even more unstable than the rest of this dimension. Energy swirled in patterns that defied physics, and the very fabric of space-time appeared to be wearing thin. "Lisa, is there any way we can reach the ethereal fleet before they cross the threshold?" Lisa shook her head. "The quantum tunnels only work in one direction, Captain. Once a ship enters this dimension, the only way out is to find another weak point in the barrier, and there are none close enough." Jake made a decision that he knew might doom them all, but could save the galaxy. "Then we stop the entities here. Kevin, begin overloading our systems for maximum chaos output. Amy, prepare your team for psychological warfare. Beth, try to establish contact with any remaining survivors in this dimension." As the crew prepared for their desperate plan, Beth managed to connect with fragments of consciousness from several destroyed ships. The survivors were weak and scattered, but they still possessed valuable information about the entity's weaknesses. "Captain," Beth reported, "the survivors are telling me that the entities become confused when faced with concepts like sacrifice, love, and loyalty. These emotional responses do not exist in their experience, and they cannot process them effectively." This gave Amy an idea for the final part of their strategy. "Captain, what if we do not just confuse them with chaotic thinking, but with uniquely human emotions? We show them what it means to fight for others instead of just survival." The plan that emerged was unlike any military strategy in Federation history. Instead of trying to outfight or outsmart their enemies, the humans would deliberately expose themselves to the entities while filling their minds with the most chaotic and contradictory thoughts possible. They would think about love and hate, simultaneously hold beliefs that canceled each other out, and remember emotions that defied logical explanation. "Kevin, how long until the ethereal fleet arrives?" 4 hours, Captain. and the entities are already moving toward the breach point. Jake looked around at his crew, knowing that what he was about to ask of them had never been attempted by any species in galactic history. They were going to try to save the galaxy by being as irrationally human as possible. All right, everyone. We are about to prove that sometimes being illogical is the most logical thing you can do. The Discovery raced toward the dimensional breach point, where thousands of entities were gathering to welcome the approaching ethereal fleet. Captain Jake Morrison knew this would likely be the last mission any of them ever flew, but if they succeeded, they would save every civilization in the galaxy from a fate worse than death. Dr. Lisa Carter had rigged every system on the ship to operate in the most chaotic way possible. Instead of smooth, predictable patterns, their engines now pulsed randomly. Their shields fluctuated wildly between different frequencies. Even their life support systems had been modified to introduce controlled instability that would confuse any entity trying to predict their behavior. "Captain, the entities are beginning to notice us," Communication Officer Beth Turner reported. "But they seem uncertain about how to respond. Our approach pattern makes no sense according to any tactical doctrine." Chief Engineer Kevin Brooks monitored the ship's deliberately unstable systems. "All chaos generators are operating at maximum inefficiency, Captain. If the entities try to analyze our technology, they will find contradictions that should be impossible." Security Chief Amy Rodriguez had prepared her team for the strangest battle in human history. Instead of weapons, they carried recordings of human music, poetry, and art. Instead of tactical manuals, they studied philosophy and literature filled with paradoxes and contradictions. Their job was not to fight the entities, but to confuse them with the full complexity of human culture. As they approached the breach point, Jake could see the ethereal fleet beginning to cross the dimensional threshold. The elegant ships of the psychically gifted race moved in perfect formation, their crews unaware of the trap waiting for them. The entities surged forward eagerly, anticipating the feast of ordered, powerful minds they were about to consume. "Now, Lisa," Jake ordered. Lisa activated the psychological warfare protocol they had developed. Instead of trying to shield their minds from the entities, they opened their thoughts completely, but filled them with the most confusing aspects of human consciousness. Jake thought about loving someone he hated, believing in ideas he knew were wrong, and fighting for causes that contradicted each other. Amy remembered every paradox she had ever encountered, every joke that relied on logical impossibility, every time she had acted against her own rational interests for purely emotional reasons. Her mind became a maze of contradictions that the entities could enter but not navigate. The effect on the entities was immediate and devastating. Creatures that had easily consumed the logical minds of dozens of species suddenly found themselves drowning in thoughts that refused to make sense. They tried to feed on human consciousness, but instead absorbed chaos that made them question their own existence. Kevin initiated the final phase of their plan. "Captain, overloading all systems now. We are about to become the most unpredictable object in this dimension." The Discovery began to break apart in a controlled cascade failure that looked like total destruction, but was actually carefully planned chaos. Pieces of the ship flew in all directions, each one broadcasting contradictory signals and impossible energy readings. The entities, expecting logical destruction patterns, found themselves unable to predict where the debris would go or what it would do. Beth managed to establish contact with the ethereal fleet at the last moment. "Ethereal command, retreat immediately. The dimensional space is compromised. Repeat, retreat immediately." But it was too late. The lead ethereal ships had already entered the forbidden dimension, and the entities rushed toward them hungrily. However, something unexpected happened. The entities that had fed on human consciousness were no longer functioning properly. Instead of efficiently consuming the ethereal minds, they began transmitting the chaotic patterns they had absorbed from the humans. "Captain," Lisa called out from her failing station, "the entities are becoming infected with our thought patterns. They are starting to think like humans, and it is destroying their ability to function as a collective consciousness." The entities that touched the ethereal minds found themselves suddenly capable of holding contradictory beliefs. They began to question their own purposes, experience emotions they had no words for, and make decisions based on impulse rather than logic. The infection spread through their network like a virus, turning predators into confused beings struggling with concepts like doubt and self-sacrifice. Amy led her security team in the most unusual assault in military history. Instead of shooting at the entities, they shared memories of human art, music, and literature. They showed the creatures what it meant to create beauty for no logical reason, to love someone despite their flaws, and to fight for principles even when fighting was hopeless. The entities, already weakened by exposure to human chaos, found these concepts completely overwhelming. Beings that had existed for eons as pure predatory intelligence suddenly experienced wonder, compassion, and the peculiar human ability to find meaning in meaningless situations. The dimensional breach point began to collapse as the entities lost their ability to maintain the complex energies needed to weaken the barrier between dimensions. Their network, built on logical cooperation and shared purpose, fell apart when infected with human irrationality and individual decision-making. Jake made the final sacrifice. As the Discovery fell apart around them, he rammed what remained of the ship directly into the center of the entity collective. But instead of trying to destroy them, he shared his final thoughts about why humans fought impossible battles, loved people who could not love them back, and believed in ideas that logic said were foolish. The explosion that followed was not one of energy or matter, but of pure conceptual chaos. The entity's collective consciousness shattered as they were forced to experience the full spectrum of human contradictions simultaneously. They learned what it meant to be brave and cowardly at the same time, to hate war while loving warriors, and to find hope in hopeless situations. When the chaos cleared, the dimensional breach had sealed itself permanently. The entities still existed, but they were no longer predators. They had become something new, something that could doubt its own hunger and choose compassion over consumption. The infection of human consciousness had fundamentally changed what they were. The ethereal fleet, shocked by what they had witnessed, managed to retreat to normal space. They carried with them recordings of humanity's sacrifice and a new understanding of why the youngest species in the Federation might actually be the most important. Back in normal space, Admiral Patricia Hayes received Beth Turner's final transmission. The message was simple, but profound. Mission accomplished. The entities are no longer a threat. Human irrationality has proven to be the galaxy's greatest defense against perfect evil. Tell the Federation that sometimes the best solution is the one that makes no sense at all. The Discovery was gone, its crew scattered across dimensions they could never return from. But their sacrifice had saved every advanced civilization in the galaxy by proving that humanity's greatest weakness was actually their most powerful strength. In a universe that rewarded logic and order, the chaotic human mind had become the ultimate weapon against forces that fed on perfection.